Hello and Happy New Year. Welcome to Filter Media. My name is FEL-G, and it is wonderful to have you here with me. So last year, there is this topic we covered. It was on haggling and how to haggle effectively. And during the video, it was mentioned that sometimes the same product may retail at different prices within a market. And so we have been receiving this question that why is it that the same product will have different prices? And so this video intends to respond to that question. And in responding to that question, our focus is going to be on the topic price discrimination. So what is price discrimination? Price discrimination is a selling strategy where the seller prices differently. The same product, it's priced differently across different markets, basing on what the buyer is willing to part with, or what the seller believes can convince the buyer to pay. So it is the same product but with different prices, basing on what the buyer is willing to part with or what the seller believes they can convince the buyer to pay. That is in a particular market. And this is affected by a number of factors. We have demographic factors. We have the value that the buyer places on the good. And we have demand, amongst other factors. So when you look at it demographically, we can have a company that produces something like, let's say, bread. And this company might have two selling points. So there is one market in a high-end estate and another market in a middle-income estate. For example, you can say, maybe let's say that the high-end estate is a place like Kilimani, and then the middle-income estate is a place like Kawangware. So in Kilimani, this bread producing company will price their breads at 80 shillings per loaf of bread. Then in Kawangware, the same loaf of bread is going to go at 50 shillings. So you can notice that there is a price difference of 30 shillings. So the reasons why they will put it at a higher price in a place like Kilimani, it's probably because the cost of operation in Kilimani is higher. Realize that they're going to pay higher rents and maybe higher wages compared to Kawangware. However, when practicing price discrimination, in order for it to be effective, first of all, the company that is practicing it should have sufficient market power to enable them to be able to dictate prices. So once they have the market power, when putting the difference in prices, they'll put the difference in prices in such a way that the consumers in Kilimani will not be encouraged to travel to Kawangware to buy the product. So this is how it will be done. You notice that the difference in prices is 30 bob, and maybe in order for a person to move from Kilimani to Kawangware, they are going to spend let's say 30 shillings in transport. That is one way. So if this person is going to move from Kilimani to Kawangware to and fro, they're going to spend 60 shillings in transport. So if they're going to Kawangware for bread, they realize that they'll end up spending an additional 30 shillings, that is in transport. So there's really no difference in purchasing it in Kilimani or moving to Kawangware to purchase it. So if you purchased it in in Kilimani, you're going to spend 80 shillings. But if you decided to move to Kawangware, you'll spend an additional 30 shillings on transport. So at the end of the day, the difference is the same. So everybody in the market will just be comfortable with the price that is available for them. And then sometimes it could be within the same market. I'm assuming we're still in Kilimani, for example. And to one retailer, I will sell the bread at 80 bob. To one consumer, I'll sell the bread at 80 bob. And to another consumer, I'm going to sell the same bread at 100 bob. So this one is affected by what we call the value that the client has for the good. So you can realize maybe this bread, we have different brands. I can have maybe Super Loaf and something else, let's say United, and there's this client who will come to buy, and this client places so much value on Superlove. So for them, in order for them to purchase bread, the bread has to be Superlove. If it is not Superlove, they're not going to buy it. And then there's this client who doesn't care. Bread is just bread. So if, as a retailer, I realize that there is this client who really values Superlove, when the client comes, I can tell them, okay, if I'm going to give you Superlove, Superlove is going at 90 bob, but if you want United, United is 80 bob. Since this client places so much value on Superlove, the client will be willing to part with the 90 shillings. But there's this other client who doesn't care. Bread is just bread. So for this one, it is hard for me to convince them to pay higher for that bread. So value also creates that thing to do with the price discrimination. It affects it. Then another factor is demand. Demand, it's actually common in the service sector. I'll give an example in the transport sector. So there's this time of the year where people travel a lot. So let's say, okay, in December, we might be moving from Nairobi back to the villages, let's say in Western. So if somebody booked a ticket in November, and this person is booking a ticket in order for them to travel on 22nd of December. So at November, the ticket will be sold at the normal price. Let's assume it is 1,200 shillings. That is in November. So when you booked your ticket in November, it was 1,200 shillings. But this ticket is for December 22nd. And then there's this person who waits until 22nd December to go and purchase the ticket. So on 22nd December, the demand will be high. There is still space in the car, but the demand is high. So on 22nd, the tickets will not be going at 1,200 shillings. It will be going at 2,200 shillings. So at the end of the day, we will have a full bus, but some people in the bus paid 1,200 shillings and others paid 2,200 shillings. So there is a difference in prices, but it is the same service. It was the difference in price is being caused by the difference in demand. When the first person at 1,200 was purchasing, the demand was normal, and the person who purchased at 22 on 22nd came to purchase it when the demand was high. It can also be there. The difference can also be when the demand is low. For example, the person who purchased on in November, maybe he purchased when the price was still normal at 1,200, and then 22nd reaches, and we need to move, but people have not come for the bus. Like the bus is still empty. So since we have to move, we are going to lower the price of the bus so that people who come at that time, okay, we're lowering the price to attract people to fill the bus at that time. So for me to attract people, I might need to lower the price to, let's say, 800 shillings. So at the end of the day, the bus will still go, but since the demand was low at that time, the people who paid earlier paid 1,200 shillings, but the people who paid last minute have paid 800 shillings. So they're all receiving the same service but at different prices. So when practicing price discrimination, especially in one area, we say that price discrimination can be practiced across different markets, that there is one market in a different geographical area, another in another area with different demographic characteristics. But sometimes it is still the same market, and we are still practicing price discrimination in that market. So for price discrimination to be practiced in that market, it is practiced in 3 categories. And in category 1, it is called the first degree price discrimination. So under first degree price discrimination, the objective of the seller is to get maximum value for what they are selling. And in first degree, I can have a product, let's say it's something like a charger. This charger of mine, my buying price was 700 shillings. So for as long as I sell it at 800 shillings, I'll be making profit. But I am at liberty to sell this product, this charger of mine, at a range of 800 shillings all the way to 1,500 shillings. So in first degree price discrimination, my goal is to make maximum profit. And what is going to drive me, or what will influence me to decide the price to give to each buyer, it is in how I judge the buyer. So this is how the seller views the buyer. when the seller looks at the buyer and the buyer appears like they can spend money, then the seller will tell this buyer from the word go that this charge is 1,500 shillings. But if the buyer appears like they don't have money, then the seller can start it at around 1,000 shillings. And this one mostly is informed by the information that the buyer has, and it's very common, especially during when selling pharmaceutical products. In pharmaceutical products, I can be selling a drug, maybe like ciprofloxacin, an antibiotic. Now, if the buyer appears like they have no information on ciprofloxacin, I can decide to charge them 300 shillings for ciprofloxacin. But if another buyer comes and the buyer appears like they have information, then I will charge that buyer 100 shillings for the same drug. So for a buyer, it is important to have information. If you have information and the seller starts you at 300 shillings and you have information, you can always bargain or haggle back to the right price. And then we also have second degree price discrimination. In second degree price discrimination, the goal is to encourage more sales. So here it operates in terms of discounts. So let's assume that charge of buying was going at 1,500 shillings, but I can tell you, if you buy 4 now, I'm going to charge you 1,200 shillings for all. So it is the same charger, but since you're buying in bulk, I'm giving you a discount. Somebody else who was not buying in bulk is going to pay a higher price than you who is buying in bulk and has been given a discount. And then the third category, this one is of your third degree. It's called what? Third degree price discrimination. Here we categorize the buyers into classes or categories, and it is common in the service sector. For example, okay, let's talk about transport again. We can say we have categorized our clients into adults and children. So we'll say adults will pay this amount of money and children will pay maybe half the price. So this one is to attract more clients, because mostly you'll discover that children might be more than the adults, but since they're paying half the price, and it is very possible that one seat can accommodate 2 children. So at the end of the day, you're not making laws, but you're encouraging more people to come. Yeah, so those are the basic classes of price discrimination. And so why do sellers practice price discrimination? So we say that in price discrimination, there is a place where you're going to sell products at a higher price, and then there's a place where you're going to sell products at a lower price. It is the same product but different prices. So for higher prices, the reason why they practice price discrimination and set higher prices, one is to get maximum value, and then mostly you realize that in places where the prices are higher, the operational cost is also higher. So they are charging higher prices to offset the additional operational costs that are incurring in that area. And then sometimes you realize that the operational cost is not that high, but since in another market they are charging a lower price, they are charging these other people higher, so that the difference will cover for the loss they're experiencing in another market. So one is to cover additional operational costs, and second is to cover for the losses experienced in other markets. Then the second scenario, price discrimination, where prices are charged at a lower rate. So the reason why sellers charge lower rates in a market, one is when a product is new in a market. So let's say it is still bread production, but you're not the first company producing bread. Other companies have been producing bread. So you are introducing your bread to the market for the first time. Why should people come for your bread? So you will charge lower in that new market. So the moment you have charged it lower, it will attract people, and then with time you can set your prices back to normal as others, because people have already tasted and they know the value of your product. That is the first reason, just to attract clients. Then the second reason why you will charge lower during price discrimination is to drive out competition. So everybody else was selling bread, and if I start selling my bread, everybody was selling it at 50. Now I'm selling it at 45. With time, everybody will be purchasing this 45 one, and those who are selling it at 50, they will face so much competition. At the end of the day, they might be forced to close down or go to another place. So it is one, to attract clients, and two, to drive out competition. That is all for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you learned something. Until next time, bye bye.